Buongiorno. Hello everybody, welcome to Italy. We are at Pescara, an amazing 25 point something kilometer long Formula 1 track. Go watch GPLaps if you like the videos that I very occasionally put out. You probably like GPLaps' content as well. He did an excellent drive using this track in the Assetto Corsa version. It's made by ItaloTracks. There will be a link in the description. It's an amazing track. Do go buy it, support the creator. I will talk a bit more about the track while we explore the various interior decoration of the houses I'm quite likely to crash into. Available for a few sims, amazing. The guys of ORM modding, they made this mod originally for rFactor, so thanks to them for permission to release this, and as well to Igor, GTSpeedster, who's also quite active in AMS modding, for granting permission because he did the original conversion from rFactor to AMS. So thanks to these guys for me being able to release this. Yes, it is released. Link in the description. I do have something to say, even if you don't even care about these old cars or these tracks, although you do probably need to make an appointment with a qualified doctor, because if this doesn't interest you, we are no longer on speaking terms. So here we go. Oh yeah, oh, that's already the engine mostly gone. Quite heavy, a lot of fuel in it, a bit over half full. So with this car you do start at a bit lower pressures because the tires heat up and they gain pressure and then they work a bit better. It made me think about sim racing and the way in which it is flawed now. It is flawed in many ways, but to my knowledge, which is infinite, as we all know. Oh, one more little remark. You see those strong looking little sort of, are they concrete or wooden poles? Well, in the original version of this track you cannot collide with them. I was not a happy man, so I spoke to ItaloTracks. I said, punish me, and he did. So now they are collidable, which is insane. It adds a lot of immersion because you are so afraid of hitting them because they sort of stop the car instantly. So if you hear sounds that sort of primal terror, fear and screaming, it is partially because of all those things being now collidable. And I'll have a word with him. Maybe this should be the insanity download that you can try for yourself, should you. And of course I realize AMS is no longer the most popular sim, but give it a go. And this track is so cool. Anyway, scary poles. And did I mention yet, the structure is already gone on this video. You are observing my 15-inch Woody, my Motolita steering wheel. Oh, sorry. Talking driving, what have I done again? He never learns. I think that's pretty clear by now. This is insane. Like, I've said it before, that having the sort of the right wheel for the car you're driving. Driving a NASCAR with a little Formula wheel is so immersion breaking. And driving a car like this with a small wheel as well is just insane. So, I've had this Motolita wheel for a long time, but haven't used it for a while, and it makes me feel like I'm Fangio, really. Oh, hear the big bumps. So there's a real immersion deal with this wheel. What was I talking about? I think I was about to say that all the sims are flawed, and then I got sidetracked by my large wood. Yeah, sims are flawed because all the cars, as far as I know, are perfect. And that doesn't mean they handle perfect, or everybody agrees that the sim is perfect. But if a car in a sim has a spring rate of 20, then all the springs will be 20.0, 0, 0, 0, blip, 0 in rate. Reality is not like that. Even modern F1, everything has its tolerances. No two springs are exactly the same. No two wishbones are exactly the same length. No two dampers, oh, I'm going fast. No two dampers are the same. No two tires are the same. However, as to my knowledge, again, I could be wrong, in sims everything is perfectly symmetrical and straight and perfectly dimensioned. And so what I've done with this mod, you can select 8 different cars. They're all different. They're the same, but they're different. So what have I done? As usual, many spreadsheets were used. I've added some randomness to the cars. Just about made it. So there are 8 different cars, and they sort of subjectively, because this is really a complicated topic, and it is more sort of the concept I want to bring across. The nature of 8 2025F cars, definitely not a 250F, that have been abused a bit, and are no longer perfect, even though, you know, out of the factory they weren't perfect either. So each car is different. And there is a PDF with the mod when you download it, with some testing reports where each car has been on the skid pad and on a runway doing some testing. Because the power levels, for example, no 2 engines are the same. One might have a little bit more torque, a bit more power, or use a bit more fuel, or run a bit hotter. Throttle response, you know, it's not like every part of this car was CNC machined, so the throttle linkage could be a little different from car to car, so your throttle response might be ever so slightly different. The mapping of the engine is ever so slightly different. And the same goes for the tires. So each of the 8 cars has unique front left, front right, rear left and rear right tires that are different in almost every way. Just a tiny bit. The tire making methods back in the day weren't super consistent, so the tire softness, the compound softness, varies a little bit from tire to tire. And that gives it slightly different grip and load sensitivity. The slip curves are unique for each tire, so there's 8 times 4 tires in this mod. Where do I brake? How about now? Ever so slight differences. You know, one tire might have a peak slip angle of 12 degrees, the other might have 12.5 degrees. Because everything in real life is not only hard to measure, because how do you even measure stuff, but everything is made to tolerances. The tire wear, for example, not only is the wear rate a little different, but also the grip changes as the tire wears is ever so slightly different. And it's not like it's huge, but maybe plus or minus 1% of grip. And the goal with all this is to have each car have some more character. So there's 8 included in this mod, and they're all different. This one is fairly stable. There's slight steering vibration because the tires aren't perfectly balanced. So each of the 8 cars will have slightly differently balanced tires, and some rattle the steering quite a bit. Some cars pull a bit to the left, some cars pull a bit to the right, some are straight. So you have to steer your 15-inch hoodie a little bit. And that's really cool. Each corner of the car will bite a bit differently because I've set a tolerance on not only the strength of the brakes. This is one of those things. In all sims, probably again, I could be wrong, the brakes are just as strong on the left and the right side. Now, this is mostly true, and with modern racing cars it's going to be close, but it's going to be never be perfectly the same. It's not like the left and right brake are exactly doing the same braking torque at the same temperature. There's gonna be a tolerance to it. And these being drum brakes, I've given them a reasonable tolerance, so the brake strength on each corner will be a little different. And again, this is not something I manually entered. I just told my spreadsheet, well, let's make the brake torque plus minus 5%, for example, and it will randomly choose a value between 0 and 5%, and it will adjust the brake strength on each corner. So in optimal temperatures, the left and right braking might be a little uneven. The car might pull a little. Maybe your inside rear brake is a bit more bitey than the others. But not just that, their temperature response is also a bit different. So maybe when the brakes are really cold, the car pulls a bit to the left. And when the brakes are hot, it's straight, for example. Simply because everything is built to tolerances, and that is the cool thing about historic cars like this, the tolerances were greater back then. More things were done with hammers than CNC machines. Oh, here we are again. Yep. So not only is this car a joy, in my opinion, to drive, it's also a great showcase for my new theory of things should not be perfect, things should have tolerance, and all these 8 cars have been used in a different way, have different tolerances, different strengths and weaknesses, slightly different balance, slightly different grip, and I think it's just a really cool thing. And whether I've executed it perfectly, probably not. But just the concept of sim cars being slightly asymmetrical, slightly suboptimal. Oh, this is too fast. Cannot imagine doing this. In my opinion, it is a really nice idea. So regardless of the execution, cars not being perfect and therefore each car having character. If you get into the number 6 car, for example, oh yeah, this has Bradley steering because a tire is out of balance on it. So what are some other things? So we talked about the tires being different, grip, slip peaks, curves, all unique, radius slightly different, tire expansion slightly different, tire spring rate and damping slightly different, rolling resistance slightly different, pneumatic trail, so the force feedback part of the tire, ever so slightly different. Expansion of the tire as you go faster, slightly different. So that's the heating and cooling slightly different. Suspensions, for example, not only are springs subject to tolerance and dampers, the actual geometry, wishbones so to speak, have a plus or minus 2 millimeter, I think, tolerance, which is still quite accurate, and it might make sense to do, for example, plus minus 5 millimeters. So the caster angle will be a little different left and right. The wheelbase is a little different left and right. Camber is a bit different. And just the picker points are different, so the roll center from the left and the right front will be ever so slightly different. And it sounds like a lot of work, but if you do the cars using spreadsheets anyway, and so Visual Basic, adding a randomizer isn't that difficult. So I predict 2025 to be the year of the spreadsheet. TikTok will flourish with spreadsheet content. And I find it really fun to drive this not straight cars, and especially the character of each car is a bit different. When you brake here, the brakes cool down insane amount, and the initial bite and the balance is different on each car. So some cars sort of alarmingly pull to the left or right when you hit the brakes. You can correct for it just with the steering, but when you don't expect it because you've not experienced that in a sim, because everything is symmetrical, this one brakes nice and straight actually. It is quite an experience feeling that, and then you can try another car and it might pull the other way slightly, or it might be straight. There's going to be a few miles an hour top speed difference. Just really cool how one car become more, and like I said, with a spreadsheet it is not super difficult to do. And now, this might, okay, I think we will die. Yeah, we will die. Ow! Ooh, you see that? That seems edible, nice. Let me sort of reconstruct that as a deliberate segue to more brake talk. Most sims, well, and by most I mean AC when I play it, and also a bit original Automobilista, but in general sims tend to do this. Cars like this, they tend to give them poor brakes. And by that I mean simply the maximum strength, the grab strength of the brakes is too weak, and you can just press 100% brake pedal and you won't really lock up too much. Maybe an inside tire when you enter the turn, maybe at the end of a long straight or something, but on a whole, too often in sim racing, you can press 100% brakes and not lock up. That is insane in my opinion, because braking is a huge challenge in cars like this. And if I simply made the brakes weak and you could just smash the pedal 100%, it would take everything sort of feel-wise out of it. It's effectively sort of an ABS. So, what I did in this mod to make the 4 people who will play this angry, the brakes can always be locked up, and it's up to you to modulate the pedal. Because it is it adds so much, these huge braking distances, to have to hover between 60 and 70% pedal input most of the time. But then the brakes are hot, then you have to hover between 70 and 80% input because they are faded a little bit and you need more pressure to brake at the limit. So it's such a shame in my opinion that sims for the longest time have had cars that have poor brakes simulated by just having weak brakes, and that just takes the skill element out of it. So some of you might find the brakes to be twitchy. Oh boy, yeah, we just good. But please give it a go. Even I've tested this with a 40 kilo brake, which is about like a Fanatec load cell brake, about 40 something kilos, and I can modulate it just fine. But just you have to train your foot to just press about halfway first and then feel it out. And when you do that, it adds a real dimension to the driving experience, because braking is now a challenge. So the reason the brakes are bad here, or the car doesn't brake super fast, is of course these tires do not have a huge amount of grip. And I don't exactly know how much grip they would have, or what the braking distances would be. But what I've done, I've given the tires more traction grip than braking grip. Whether that's realistic, I wouldn't be able to tell you. I've seen it in real data on modern tires, but it can go all different directions. But anyway, the choice I made was that the tires when braking have about 10% less grip than accelerating. So the rear tires have a reasonable amount of grip, although here uphill, oh, I'm not there yet, I thought I was there. Uphill you can have eternal wheel spin in first and second gear. There's not a lot of grip, but braking is a bit worse than accelerating. So the tires don't have a lot of grip, but the brakes do have the ability to lock the tires, and the braking grip changes all the time with temperature and is never symmetrical. And with low grip, that means you can lock up and you have to find that balance point, and the car will move around. And braking is a huge challenge. So I made the decision in the car setup, you cannot change the brake strength. You just have to figure out how to slow these cars down. It takes too much away if you use weak brakes. It's not really a good simulation of the poor braking that they had back then. If you don't leave 5 skid marks in this car, you're not doing it properly. However, since I am only mildly evil, there is ABS. However, I've tuned the ABS to stop you from locking the tires. However, it brakes a bit too hard, so the car does become a bit unstable and you slide too much. But you just stop them from locking, so it is slightly easier to control, and you won't quite go as straight on as dramatically. So you could try ABS. And in my opinion, using this form of ABS, if you have not as great control over your leg, or your pedals aren't as good, it is more realistic to use ABS this way, which is not amazing ABS, but just about helps you a little bit, than to just have weak brakes that you can flatline your brake at 100%. That is less realistic in my opinion than having a slightly moderately tuned ABS that just stops them from locking. It is just so cool that you feel you have to press the pedal harder when the brakes are fading, and you can still lock up. There is so much happening with the brake pedal. It's so essential to driving and controlling a car that it's just, well, I've been trying to put it into words for a few minutes now. Essential, in my opinion, to give control to the player from initial braking to lockup, and never dumb it down or sort of numb it down by having weak brakes. This is still early days, so in the absolute early days, 30s, 20s, 30s, 40s didn't really happen. Well, they happened, but things happened that didn't involve racing. They didn't really have hydraulic dampers. They used what they call friction dampers, which aren't really that amazing. And the cars had leaf springs and were quite bouncy. And somewhere in the 60s, oil dampers like telescopic dampers became the norm. And this car, which came out I think in 54 or something, does have a form of hydraulic damping, but it's not a telescopic in and out slidey thing. It is sort of a rotation damper. And I know nothing about them, but I've made the assumption it's not that great. So it's a lot better than having no damping, but the damping rates are fairly sort of soft. And there are actual places on track like this. I will try to do the next lap a bit faster. He says, fully confident it will go amazingly well. This track has quite a lot of bumps and the suspension is quite soft, which is great. One of the big benefits of a car like this over like a 1930s Bugatti. It's quite bouncy and this is quite soft, so it takes the bumps fairly well. But then because the damping is a bit suboptimal, the car tends to rock and pitch quite a bit. Will I make it this time? Oh, you see 70-ish% braking and we are making it. That was just hairy. So of course I can make the dampers perfect, but I'm sort of thinking, not being an expert at all on sort of the history of these cars exactly, but assuming that the dampers will not be amazing, you don't really notice that too much on a modern track. But here there are some bumps and certain places where the car really starts to wobble. It goes up and down, but it also sort of, what's that sort of breakdancey move? Well, I don't think there was breakdancing in 1957. And it becomes a handful in those areas, and you have to know where the bumps are and be on the correct trajectory when you hit those bumps, and then the car will sort of wobble over it. So it's another area where I deliberately... There is quite a large tolerance on, the dampers. They're all different on each corner, and also the damping is a bit weak. I'll try to push a bit, and you predict how long it will take before we die. Oh, no rev limit on this engine. So when you miss a gear and you press the throttle and it revs to 9.5, you really hurt the engine. So you have to take care. However, just now that I've made everybody angry with the non-adjustable brakes, trying to explain why my ABS that it's just about stops them from locking is the better choice. There are a few things you can do on each car. There are a few ease of drive upgrades. If you go to the showroom menu in AMS, you can slow the car down in rotation. If you don't have quite the feel or the force feedback and you struggle to control the car, you can sort of sluggish down the response a little bit. Makes it a lot easier with a gamepad as well. And there's also an option there to install a rev limiter. And of course you can manually select if you want to use auto clutch. And in this case it's not enabled, so I have to ref match, but using auto clutch you don't have to ref match. You can also select just in the game menu blipping and lifting to make it a bit easier. And traction control has 3 settings, so the first setting just helps a little bit. You know, it's still really easy to steer by throttle. Ooh. Ow, where? Ow. Yeah. So you wonder why these cars are a bit bent. I have no idea why they're a bit asymmetrical. Couldn't explain you why that was the case. So if you're not as hardcore, of course, that's all legit. Look at those upgrades. Slowing the rotation of the car down really makes it more approachable. If you don't have the nice 4-seat back, don't have the nice pedals, use a bit of ABS. If you struggle with the wheel spin, use low or medium traction control. It all becomes a lot more approachable. The good thing about this car is a lot, but also it's a lot narrower than the cars of today. And I'm not used to it yet. So I think the reason I'm only dying often instead of all the time is that in my mind it's a modern car that leaves me about half a meter width on each end. Or I think it is, but it's actually not. So the more confident I get, and the moment I realize the dimensions of the car, the more I will die, that's for sure. Imagine here, blind crest, car goes light, collidable stumps there. Just imagine driving this. Insane that they did that. And that this car just wants to steer on the throttle. But you have to be on here as well. You see it go up and down, undamped almost. And of course, he hasn't mentioned it yet, so he will have to do it right now. Because of the sort of flawed model in most sims, a car like this you would accelerate out of a turn with 80% throttle, and then the back would swing out. Of course, in this car I've done the throttle model the way I think is more realistic. And you really feel it, that you start with 40, 50% throttle maybe, 30 something percent at least. And then the engine picks up already. So not having to start with 80-90% and then the torque comes and you slide out, you start with 40-50% and the engine is a lot more controllable and behavable, and you can control the sidewaysness of the car, because it's easy to go sideways, I find anyway, in this car. But of course the trick is to go just sideways enough, and a lot of the time with so little grip and quite a bit of power. That means not being at 100% throttle, but being somewhere between 50 and 100%. And balancing that throttle position together with the slightest bit of opposite lock. That's how you drive this car. At least, that's how you want to drive this car. You also want to slow it down at the second bar, yeah. Oh, squirmy. No apex. See, that is, you can maybe just about see the throttle bar there. Oh. Also listen out for the tire squeal. It was just about happy tire squeal. So look, the throttle pedal. See, it was about 2/3 and already the back stepped out. See, that was just over half throttle. So that was too much, so I had to start a bit less than that. And since we're not used to that still, I don't think we are, or at least plenty of people are, what happens is they do Assetto Corsa and, you know, it goes sideways instantly. The tires do wear out, but they don't lose a huge amount of grip. In fact, they gain a little bit of grip when during the first quarter or so of wear. And by the time the the bar turns red. This is altogether too fast. When the bar turns red, you still have 95% grip. So there is wear, and it definitely changes the balance. There is no other way than to wear out the rear tires before the fronts. There's just no other way. Making the corner. You can influence it, of course, if you're tidier, controlling that slip and controlling your throttle pedal to just have those perfect neutral steering exits. Then of course the rear tires wear a bit less fast, but there is no way to stop them from outwearing the fronts and the balance turning towards oversteer. However, the fuel tank is one of the other okay, it's a bouncy bit. Oh. Fuel tank is all behind the rear axle, and you can start with up to 150 kilograms of fuel. So this car, the weight distribution goes backwards 10% with a full tank. And with a full tank it's a bit like a Porsche 911. It really wants to step out and keep at that angle for a long time. So in a way, as the tires wear, the fuel also burns off. So you don't get quite the extra oversteer you might expect, because the weight balance moves forward. But definitely there is less grip at some point. Just a few words on the track though, it's really cool. So I know ItaloTracks, he hangs out in the AMS1 Discord. He spent an insane amount of time making this track. And of course AMS1 is an old game, and I do think maybe, even considering the engine, some of the bits could look a bit better. It does seem to look a bit nicer in Assetto Corsa. But just that one person spent a couple of years individually modeling each house and painstakingly modeling the track. It just oozes atmosphere, and it's also knowing that this effort has been put into it makes me appreciate it quite a lot. One of the problems with modding games, there's a lot of desire for sort of instant gratification. Just, you know, ripping models out of a game and slapping them into another game. Quantity over quality. And that happens a lot with, I suppose, all games that people can mod. There's that sort of lazy modding scene. But there's also, and this is not just for racing games or Automobilista or Assetto Corsa, people who are properly into it. There's not that many, but those who are, you get a quality level and an attention to detail that is simply not commercially, logically possible. EA would never spend the time like was put in here into the stages of their rally game. And the thing is, it doesn't even make it perfect. The physics of the original cars are not perfect, and this track has some issues and doesn't quite push the limit even of what AMS1 can do, but you feel the love and attention and dedication of the people involved, and that just makes me a bit warm inside, unlike modern AAA games where you feel that everybody is on a time crunch. And the content has to be done, and then the game is barely functional. Oh, a bit of understeer there, never takes long. So definitely, you know, if you like this sort of idea for AC or AMS1, consider supporting ItaloTracks. He's legit. Oh, and this is legit impossible. Buongiorno. So let's maybe have some closing thoughts. Try this out if you like AMS1 still. You might dig it up in your AMS library somewhere down the bottom. Try this car out. Also, definitely, if you like this sort of thing, try ItaloTracks' Pescara track. It's an insane track to learn, and it makes you appreciate people back in the day doing 160 miles an hour through the streets like this. The concept here, cars that are not perfectly made, everything has its tolerances, everything is asymmetrical, everything you can imagine is not quite perfect. And there are 8 cars here, they're all the same, but they all are subject to tolerances, and some will be faster, some will be slower, some will turn a bit oversteery to the left, a bit understeery to the right, or the other way around. Steering will vibrate because the tires are off balance, that sort of thing. So just like I just spoke about the character in this track, and you sort of feel and you appreciate how it is loved and carefully crafted by ItaloTracks. I hope that making the cars a bit random in a hopefully semi-smart way also gives them a bit of character. At least it's food for thought, maybe also for developers. Stop making your cars perfect. Maybe that's a New Year's resolution. And with that, I think I'll leave you by shutting up and saying goodbye. Whew. So how hard is it to kill the engine? About that hard. Bye bye.